Very welcome back. I hope you all had a great lunch and a very pleasant walk back from the main guest house. The next session we have on advancing India's bioeconomy, and we have our panelists joining here. Dr. Alka Sharma, Senior Scientist H, Department of Biotechnology. We have Shri Krishna Mohan Puvvada, Senior Vice President, Planetary Health and Regional President, MEIA Novonesis. We also have Mr. Peter Bains, Group CEO of Biocon Group. We have Professor Usha Vijayraghavan, Dean, Biological Sciences Division, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. We have Dr. Bhuvnesh Shrivastava, Director, Healthcare, US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. And the panel is moderated by Professor Gayatri Saberwal, Dean, Institute of Bioinformatics and Applied Biotechnology. I request all our panelists to join for the discussion. And I will hand it over to Professor Gayatri to moderate the discussion.
So, good afternoon to everyone. First, on behalf of everyone with me, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting us. So, our discussion today will revolve around India's bioeconomy, with a particular focus on how international engagement can help us achieve our goals. I would like to start with making a few comments. In the area of healthcare, for instance, India is known for its generic drugs, it is known for its vaccines, and it is becoming known for its biosimilars. Therefore, in each of these areas, we would want to ramp up and also indigenize most, if not all, parts of each chain of production from innovation onwards, so to speak. This would be one way to help grow the bioeconomy. What we make for India, we make for the world. Not just the developing world, but also for the US, for instance, where the price of drugs is often a big cause of concern. I believe 1 in 4 Americans find it difficult to afford their prescription drugs. That's a huge fraction. So to think India is also to think global. Part of our discussion will be on how we want to ramp up. So these are the areas that we have already shown that we know how to do things at scale. What is the next frontier? It seems to me that the next frontier has to be innovative, first in the world products. Today, we usually think of such products coming out of US or Europe. What prevents them coming from India? Again, lower cost innovative products from India would benefit the whole world. So part of our discussion will be on how will we make these very innovative products in India. But it is not just novel products that we want. We also want to try and solve other problems in parallel. Can we convert agricultural waste to fuel? Can we manufacture other products that have a low environmental impact? Can we undertake manufacturing in a way that has low environmental impact, and so on? So we need to think of innovation, and we need to think of the processes by which we manufacture those innovative products. And all of this with a view to growing our bioeconomy. We should also keep in mind that bioeconomy is not just about the economy. It is about health security and national security in other ways, for instance. So our panelists, of course, know about these topics much more than I do. So we will now move and have the panel discussion. Just for starters, we are most fortunate to have with us Dr. Alka Sharma, a senior officer of DBT, and who better than her to give us the government's plans in this regard. Most of you would know that DBT has last August released a Bio-E3 policy. It is a very concise document of just 16 pages. So if you haven't read it, I would urge you to do so. So Dr. Sharma, would you brief us about the policy and explain how it aligns with our bioeconomy ambitions? And how do you see international collaboration, since that's a little bit the focus of this panel, be they with academia, industry, or government, contributing to these ambitions?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Gayatri, for summarizing this about the panel, and dignitaries on the dais and off the dais, faculties, innovators, startups, all the participants here who all are present in this room for this panel. I must say that first of all, I would like to thank each one of you that the way actually the program has been chalked out for this entire event and tried to cover almost all the major mission programs which Government of India is driving. So this is something I was going through the program, and I observed that almost all the mission programs have been covered in this event. And the topic of this panel is really very, very interesting, important, and also relevant to the current scenario, that is advancing India's bioeconomy. So since I am from biotechnology, I must say that biotechnology, recognized as a sunrise sector, is one of the enablers for driving bioeconomy in the country. And if you really see that the global biotech industry now has grown by 5% for the past few years, and India contributes 3% market share to global biotech industry. We are the largest vaccine manufacturer, and India has become the third largest startup ecosystem globally. So if we really talk about bioeconomy, so the data which was available up to December 2023, based on the analysis, we have crossed $151 billion bioeconomy in 2023. And the target is to achieve $300 billion by 2030. And the data for 2024 is under analysis, so it is now any time that we'll come to know that, and we are sure that we will be able to achieve the target well before 2030. So Government of India is now, had made lot of efforts for laying strategies, policies, also to create ecosystem, to have end-to-end processes, regulatory also to address regulatory reforms from time to time. So the Government of India efforts from time to time just to promote the science, but particularly biotech, that we can say that it is very timely. And biotechnology, powered by innovation and technology, leverages biological resources, processes, and technology for creating solutions for industry, from agriculture to healthcare to bioenergy and so on. So, and here biomanufacturing plays a crucial role, that how to use living organisms and also how to address the issues which we are facing nowadays, and also that it is globally also the issues are the same. So biomanufacturing has potential to intensify entrepreneurial momentum, promote sustainability, and also translate the innovations from lab to market, to promote sustainability and also how to mitigate climate change, environmental degradation, bioenergy, and biomass. So in order to address these issues, the Government of India, the Union Cabinet, has approved Bio-E3 policy very recently, August 2024. On 24th August, under the chairmanship of Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, this policy has been approved, and that is biotechnology for economy, environment, and employment. This is first of kind policy, first time in the country that any policy has come in biotechnology. And this policy is addressing almost all the issues which actually under the umbrella of biomanufacturing. And this was released by the Honorable Minister on 31st August, the same month, 2024. And to formulate this policy, the way we actually work with all stakeholders, we organized national consultation, and after that also some interministerial meetings, and based on the discussion held with all stakeholders, including startups, industries, SMEs, academicians, this policy has 6 thematic areas. The first is bio-based products, which have sub-areas, specialty chemicals, enzymes, biopolymers, and also APIs. Then the second thematic area is functional food and smart proteins. The third one is precision biotherapeutics, that is cell and gene therapy, monoclonal antibodies, mRNA therapeutics. The fourth thematic area which has been identified under this policy is climate resilient agriculture. The fifth one is carbon capture and its utilization. And the sixth one is, which we are exploratory in nature, marine and space research. So that is also under the umbrella of biomanufacturing, and that is covered under Bio-E3 policy. So these thematic areas will be augmented by bio-enablers in the form of setting up of biofoundries, bio-artificial intelligence hub, and biomanufacturing hubs across the country. So this is actually the policy has been designed to cover almost all the areas which can contribute significantly to the issues which are being faced by the environmental that area, and also to generate employment in the country. And all the activities which we are now proposing under three categories, that is discovery and application-oriented research network, that is the first category, but the TRL may be up to 3 to 5. So basic research will continue what DBT is doing, and other funding agencies are also doing, supporting and promoting basic research, that will continue as such. But under this policy, the first category, discovery application-oriented research network, that covers the research proposals which at least the outcome should be up to TRL 3 to 5. So the path should be there for translational research, and also application-oriented programs will be supported. The second one is very, very important in current scenario, is bridging the gap. So basically, how to take innovations from lab to market and finally into commercialization. And it should reach to the market. So that is bridging the gap. If some proof of concept has been established, some leads are available, how to take those proof of concept and leads to the next level, and the TRL level may be up to 5 to 7. As an expected outcome that we have defined under bridging the gap. So it may start from 3 to 5, and it can go up to 5 to 7 depending on the nature of the project. The third one is bioenablers, as I said, the setting up of biofoundry. We actually, we always think sitting in the government in a central place, it's not that nothing has happened so far, lot of things are happening. And it's also, always we observe that everything has been done. That is also not the scenario. Somewhere we have to connect the dots. So how to do that? The facilities are available, supported by DBT, DST, CSAR, many ICMR, and all major national institutions, they almost have the major facilities in place. But how to bring them together under one umbrella, just to keep that problem in mind, that this will solve this kind of problem, and researcher, startup, and industry can get that kind of facility infrastructure under one roof. So to minimize the time, and also just to work with all stakeholders. So here actually the idea is setting up a biofoundry that just to take some kind of leads from, it's an end-to-end process under one umbrella, and where some kind of chemicals, enzymes, bio-based products can be developed up to a certain TRL level, that is 5 to 7, 3 to 5 initially. Maybe that is under biofoundry. So biofoundries can be set up in academic institutions and also in collaboration with industries. So that is something that in the academic institution can also come forward. And the second is setting up of biomanufacturing hubs. So that is just to take the technologies from 3 to 5 up to maybe 9, TRL 9. So that will cover pilot and pre-commercial scale. Because commercial, that industry will take up that further after pre-commercial, getting that kind of confidence that this technology is feasible, it will work. So the bottleneck currently, what we are seeing, that this is bridging the gap. How to bring innovations from lab to market. So these biofoundries and biomanufacturing hubs will really help the startups and also innovators to take their leads to that particular place and connect themselves, maybe collaborator, and maybe we have also asked institution that we will give some money to facilitate the activities of a startup in that particular institutions. So we have given some number, at least 8 or 9 startups they have to accommodate. And that money will come for the operational cost will come from the cost of the project. So that is something that is very, very important. So under 3 categories, it has been defined. So basically, overall aim is to steer India on a path of green growth through biotransformation to achieve the bioeconomy target, which I said to 2030, up to 2030, $300, and also national economic goals of 2047. This is something very futuristic policy that Government of India has approved. So I'll stop here. I would like to hear from others. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, clearly it's a very, is it working? Yeah. Very comprehensive policy, and I think for the first time I'm hearing of TRL levels actually being defined in a policy, and that's a very sort of quantitative thing which can spur our goals. Okay, so I mean, there are many thoughts, but let us move forward. I come now to the industry viewpoint. So we have with us 2 industry leaders, Shri Krishna Mohan from Novonesis, which is a cousin or sister concern of Novo Nordic, and Mr. Peter Bains from the Biocon group. So may I request Shri Krishna Mohan and then Mr. Bains to share your insights on technology diplomacy in this sector. Maybe what we've been doing well, what we need to do. If each of you could also talk about some of the gaps where Indian and foreign companies can collaborate, and whether you see some steps being taken to fill those gaps.
Thank you, and thank you, Alka ji, for outlining. The Bio E3 policy is really a great game changer. In my view, it sets the direction. The industry is also very clear. It also brings the whole ecosystem and brings in a lot of clarity. So thank you, your team and the government for this. When we look in terms of the bioeconomy and also the future, this is possibly the best ever time that we have. Right, there is access to capital, there is access to technology, the ecosystem is becoming better and better, and I think from an India perspective, it's a fantastic time. This is our time, this is the moment of truth. We need to capture it, we need to seize it. Is everything right? No, possibly not, but we'll make it to work. We'll need to make it to work, we'll need to make it to happen. And I guess that is with that spirit, with the startups, the industry, the academia, we all need to move ahead. Now, when we look in terms of last 10 years, what has happened, and is this suddenly overnight getting manifested? No. For the last 10 years, 15 years, things have been happening. And I'll just point out a few things which is happening in the industrial biotech side. The ethanol blending program is a great example of how technology convergence happens and how the whole ecosystem benefits. So in the 10 years of ethanol blending, so every liter of petrol that you fill today has got about 18% of bio-based ethanol into it already out there. So we are well on track to the 20% blending target that the country has outlined by 2025.1 what does this mean? Over the last 10 years, I'll just put in some figures out there. We have been able to save 1,10,000 crores of forex saving. 1,10,000 crores of forex saving. That's massive. Then we have been able to save 55.7 million metric tons of CO2 reduction. Right. It's a huge thing. Now, we've also given farmers an income or money worth about 92,400 crores. Now, this is the power of the whole ecosystem. Now, when we look at India, and then India has twin objectives. One, a Viksit Bharat by 2047, and also decarbonization net zero goals by 2070. I think these both go hand in hand, and biotech is a way for a path enabling to get to our defined goals. Now, when we look at bio and what are the industries that could benefit, the ethanol one and blending biofuels is one part of it. But just building on that, we also need to be looking that with ethanol now in place, what does this entire ecosystem mean? It's a gateway for the emergence of the biochemical market, right? With the bioethanol in place, you can use that ethanol as a building block. And how big is the bio-based market globally? It's about 150 billion growing to 300 billion by 2032, growing at around 8 to 9%. It's a huge space. And with the India's advantage in terms of biomass, agriculture, 1G, 2G, it's just a gateway for Indian startups, Indian industries to sort of fill that up. And this is where I would like to connect what Alka ji talked about, well, in terms of the biofoundries, in terms of the collaboration. We need to make it happen. The industry needs to come together. We need to have a very mission mode kind of thing as to how can India capture this emerging spaces. The other part is, as we go along, a few new spaces that I think will also emerge where India needs to take the lead, and India can take the lead, is all the entire part of bioplastics. Now, you can actually use sugar-based derivatives, and India is plenty on sugar. Now, you can use sugar-based derivatives and enter into that space. PET degradation. World we see. Now you can use biotechnology and get that problem solved by using fermentation. And there's a company called Carbios where Novonesis as a company has partnered with. Now these are things which are new, emerging, but India can lead the way, can take steps ahead. I can go on here, but I'll probably come back to the academia a little later after giving a chance to Peter and team.
Is this one working? Yes, it is. Great, thank you. Thank you, Professor Gayatri, for inviting me to this very important meeting, and to my colleagues on the dais. Let me start with just a couple of reflections on my colleagues' responses here. First and foremost, we welcome and applaud BioE3 as a framework. I think it provides a lot of input and a lot of direction as to where the government is pointing its direction, and provides for the enterprise sector a very good source of reference. And it's early days, but I think we applaud it and welcome it. I also want to amplify my colleague's comment about this being a very exciting time for India. And I truly believe it is. And I think in one of the opening presentations yesterday, the Minister suggested calling the next decade a techade, where technology would come to the forefront. And I truly believe that is a very good way to capture that objective and an aspiration to push India forward. And while I think it is definitely India's time in technology and in wider technology than just biotechnology, I also think India starts from a biotech perspective and a wide biotechnology position, actually not in a leadership position, with a long way to go ahead. But it is India's time. I mean, I think one statistic mentioned already is that India is 3% of the global bioeconomy. It's 17% of the population. 3% is way, way off where India should be in the years ahead. In terms of diplomacy, I think India is doing a good job on the global basis through a number of initiatives in embracing technology diplomacy through things like the Initiative for Critical Emerging Technologies with the United States, and through the Trade and Technology Council, through the Trade and Technology Initiative collaboration in Europe. So at a global stage, I think the scene is being set. I think India is represented at the table and playing its part, and I think it's doing more as time goes on, and I think that's very good. If I narrow the lens to biotech, and if I speak more narrowly in my field, which is biotechnology, and exclude some of the other technologies that will be mentioned here, health, agri, materials, fuels, and so forth, I don't think there's enough activity, and I think there's a long way to go there on a diplomacy basis. There are one or two standout exceptions which show what India can do. COVID, for example, with the diplomacy around COVID vaccinations and the globally essential role that India played in combating COVID. That's a standout, shining North Star example to me of where India can go. But if I look at other areas of biotechnology, where is India, for example, in mRNA or cell and gene therapy or CRISPR-Cas9, these emerging technologies which are going to shape the future of interventional medicine. Again, there are some exceptions that stand out in India, but on a broader competitive global basis, it has a long way to go, and it needs to look at that. There are plenty of opportunities to do that, I believe, on a global basis, but there are also many opportunities to do it on a basis that, for example, could be South-South collaboration to look at some of the therapy areas and diseases that are prevalent in the South-South axis and collaborate on a technology diplomacy basis there. So I'm very, very excited because I think India has phenomenal potential and all the essential ingredients, although all of the essential ingredients need further work on them. And here I'm talking about academia on the one hand, the government on the other hand, and the private sector as well. I mean, Biocon, I think, is India's largest scientific team. I think as a company, we are the largest scientific team in India. So we benefit enormously from the 2 million STEM graduates that come out of the wonderful Indian academic institutes each year. So we're a huge beneficiary of that. But the academic part, I mean, there are some statistics here that only 5% of academic R&D ever translates currently into commercial output in India, and only 10% of private enterprises have collaborations with academia. That has to get better and improve, and it's moving in the right direction, needs to accelerate. The government are doing a lot, and the BioE3 framework is a very welcome intervention and guide there. But again, if I go to fundamentals, the R&D spend is 0.65% of GDP. That's a quarter of what it is in the United States and a third of what it is in China. So there's more to do there if you want to really take the position that you're going to move from 3% to why not 20% of global bioeconomy with a population that's 17%. And in the private sector, there's lots of things that need to be done there. One other thing, I'm sure we'll come back to it on the government side, is regulation. There needs to be changes in regulation here to facilitate enterprise, and we've got some ideas on that. And in the private sector, entrepreneurism is alive and kicking in India. The statistics on the startup ecosystem are fantastic, 100,000 startups, 100 unicorns. But the venture capital market in India is still nascent. 1.5 billion compared with 28 billion in the United States. And the maturity and sophistication of that venture capital market to support startups and move them through that delicate phase from academia into translating into proof of concept. India will need a stronger venture capital infrastructure and ecosystem to support the potential that it has to create many more hundreds of thousands of startups and move through that innovation curve. So I'm going to stop there, but I'm sure we'll come back to touch on some others, but let me hand back to Professor Gayatri.
So, I think to speak to a couple of things that you mentioned, I think, although capacity building is an old and maybe tired term, I think we need more capacity building, and I'm sure some of the, all the various efforts that DBT has addressed in its policy relate to that. So whether it's the, numbers of well-qualified STEM graduates, whether it's the number of academic centers, number of startups or incubators or translational teams, of course companies, but they would largely do their own thing with maybe some government facilitation. Unless we build capacity, because as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we're not just building for India. If we think we're building for the world or going to conquer the world, we need far more capacity. And the 0.6, 0.7% that you referred to, Peter, if we're going to take that up, we have to invest in that basic capacity building. As I said, it's an old term, but it's not, we can't ignore it. For this massive country of ours, we just don't have enough capacity, I think, at every single step, where we're talking quality at every single step, Anyway, So I'll come to now Professor Usha Vijayraghavan from this very campus. Usha, could you tell us about the trends that you have seen in academia and its movement to startups or larger companies, and what do you see as accelerating that process?
Thank you, Gayatri. Can you hear me? So usually, when you're a professor, you speak loud. So I was hoping that carried through. Anyway, it's wonderful to be here, and thank you to MEIA and PSA for putting this dialogue together at a very opportune moment. And let me address the question on what are the trends in innovation in academia and how these can, fuel the startup to pre-commercialization to commercialization, that pipeline. I must say that is a fundamentally very, very important pipeline to have, because discoveries which are made, innovations which are made by research teams in academia, oftentimes, like Peter mentioned and others also mentioned, never make it across to the technology pipeline, and they are lost and left within the academic setting. So in that context, what is happening, and it's a wonderful to note this, is the setting up of biofoundry and biomanufacturing units within academic institutions. Within academic institutions which are educations of higher learning. And this is where, proposals which require innovation jointly between researchers across wide disciplines, biological sciences, chemistry, chemical engineering, systems engineering, and industry together need to identify which is the concept or which is the gap where innovation to TRL3 is required, which is the gap where there is TRL3 to TRL4 that's required, and having such units which are embedded within academic centers will allow for knowledge generation as well as knowledge generation in areas which are co-identified by industry and academia. So that's a trend that's happening, and it is hugely good to see that it's very, very well aligned with the Bioin3 policy, and it helps such units to actually grow in other institutions. So I can tell you, for example, at the Indian Institute of Science, such initiatives actually are being channeled to the Foundation for Science, Innovation and Development, which we call FSID and Office, where we leverage academic strengths of faculty and students and researchers and postdocs with industry partners who co-develop ideas for research, etc. Now, what have we done already? We're already working not only on bioethanol, on single-cell manufacturing factories for alkenes. Alkenes lead into very, very many different products. For synthetic microbial circuits, for you to be able to make value-added products, valuable products, whether it is nutraceuticals, flavonoids, enzymes which go into the biotech or even in the environmental industry for biodegradation and so on. So these are concepts where we must be holding innovations and patents in our hand. And in some instances, there might be an innovation which is not seeing the light of the day. So co-incubating industry leaders and industry researchers who have a very good way of achieving things in a strategic manner within an academic setting, that is absolutely required. So some of the startups that we have incubated right here at IISc, I don't want to name one and not name others, are already in this spectrum of making, nutraceuticals or dyes or alkenes and vaccines and so on. And we're hoping that this model grows and grows exponentially, not only at a place like IISc, but also at other institutions.
Yeah, that's very well put. I think maybe when BIRAC set up its BioNest program, where it established incubators on academic campuses, that may have been one of the biggest steps taken to sort of bring elements of commerce onto academic campuses.
Yes.
And it kind of changes the atmosphere. And more will happen with the biofoundries. I think the siloization which has happened for decades perhaps had its own, there was a need for that also, that you focus on basic research, but then a point comes when you need to be talking to commercial partners. So very nice. Thank you, Usha.
I want to also mention that it's not only the economy as in dollars or rupees, it is in building the skill set and building a pipeline for career advancement which capitalizes on the aspirational things that, entrepreneurs, the current day 21st century teenager is aspirational in a different way than the 20th century teenager was. So, we actually allow for career development of the young people into problems and becoming entrepreneurs and startups and so on. So, somebody having worked in this biofoundry or manufacturing small unit, which is putting academia and industry together, already knows how to think. Supposing I go into a startup, how am I going to do this? Having that experience is going to help them a lot.
And having, I guess, a range of role models, which earlier they didn't have in close proximity.
Yes.
Right, okay. So finally, I turn to Dr. Bhuvnesh Shrivastava from the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, which I will call the forum. So we know that in today's world, countries cooperate in science and technology based on geopolitical considerations. So the US is partnering India in a way that it would not partner with China, for instance. And the forum is one example of this. So the forum was set up in 2017. Bhuvnesh, could you comment on some of the bio-related issues that the forum has already been involved with, and maybe on more general steps that are being contemplated to increase this strategic collaboration and perhaps potential areas for such collaboration?
Thank you so much, Professor Saberwal. And if with your permission, I may digress a bit from the question in the beginning and then come to the point. So I want to place it on record because Dr. Alka is here, my mentor. I was her team member at some time. So just a little historical context to the bioeconomy report that we have in country today. There was a time that we used to get a lot of queries, questions on the Indian bioeconomy status. What is the size and what is our aspiration? So I think under the instructions from Secretary and led by Dr. Alka, we started this exercise with the extensive consultation with the industry, trying to understand which components, which are the key contributions and where we are. And once we could map those bioeconomy figures, then I think we can certainly have our aspirations to achieve it. So very glad to see this report is here. It's an annual feature and I think I'll recommend everybody to read that report. Coming back to your question on India and US relationship and what are the key stimulus from both sides, what are the apprehensions and fear that we are living with. So I think to understand this dynamics, we would need to understand the interdependencies that we have in both the nations. Like for the affordable generics, the prescription drugs, the high quality, low cost drugs, a lot of FDA compliant plant outside US. We have, I think, the highest one, the 200 plus plants for the manufacturing perspective. These are our strengths. But likewise, also India is also dependent in import of high-end equipments and the devices on US, access to a lot of innovative therapies. For example, if I were to talk about the rare disease, if I were to talk about the oncology drugs, a lot of other innovative therapies are being imported as of now. So we have our dependencies on each other. But then if I were to talk about this symbiotic relationship, but their joint dependency is on another country that comes to the China. So 70% of the import of the API or the key starting material is still happening from China. And I think the talk for the Biosecure Act, the China +1 have been there for the long time, but I think we yet to have move on them. One very good point that Dr. Alka made, and I want to build on that, we need to see in totality where we are and what the government is doing. If you will see from that lens, because we used to do a lot of briefing with our international counterparts, I think we have done phenomenally well. If you will see every department of government of India, they have played their part. If I were to start right from DBT, we have this National Biotech Development Strategy in place for 5 years, supported by BioE3 in place, because now we also want to focus on sustainability and the environmental responsibility. Similarly, if I were to talk about Honorable PSA's office, we have this One Nation, One Subscription program, which gives you a relentless access to the lot of journals and the scientific data that we need to build. If I were to talk about the Indian Drug Controller General of India, I think the last 2 years they came up with this implementation of new Schedule M, which is a way to upgrade your facility to at par with the GMP, WHO GMP. The new vaccine policy, lot of emphasis on the drugs and device list. If I were to talk about ICMR, they are the custodian of national list of essential medicine, essential devices, diagnostics. Everything is coming with the due consultation from the industry. Similarly, because it is an interplay between different departments, so Department of Expenditure playing its role in the public procurement, Make in India plays its own role. But I think if you will go to these departments, I can go on, every department has a guidance document, a policy in place, and a very clear aspiration. So I think that is one thing that every country, every international partners really likes. We have, I mean, if you have to move in India and you see the size and the scale, you have to be that cautious, one can clearly understand that. So that is where there are some bone of contention. There are some topics that get debated on IP or access, on the pricings, a lot of IP infringement that happens, a lot of quality issues that we face. But still, if I were to come back to the point of India and US relationship, I think that is a difficult dynamics, but a very symbiotic one. A lot of enthusiasm is there still after the new administration is placed. The joint priorities have been identified for the access and all the programs that were already running. If you will see all the bilateral forums as well as the multilateral forums, which could be the Quad, which could be the program which is Cancer Moonshot, which is one of the initiative under Quad. Then you can talk about the vaccine partnership. I think everything is in place. Nothing is falling out because of the new administration. But I think everyone is moving very slowly, gradually to wait and watch. And of course, there will be reciprocations from both the sides if there are tariff barriers, which depends. But India has really done well recently, reducing the custom duties, GST on a lot of life-saving drugs, cancer drugs. So I think we are doing our bit, but everything has to move in view of the population that we are catering, the segment that we want to serve, and we have been really appreciated well across the globe for having the largest public government-funded insurance, which is Ayushman Bharat. So, you know, bringing anything under Ayushman Bharat is not easy because the cap does not provide you the capability to cover everything. But I think there is an intent. Government is pushing it hard, and as individual entities, everyone is working to reduce the out-of-pocket expenditure, but that will take some time. So I think this is an evolving relationship, but we have a lot of enthusiasm. We are continuing with all the bilateral bodies, the platforms like the trade policy forums, the other talks that happens between these two countries, and providing all the policy stimulus that will work on both of the sides. So I think if you will see all these departments, their document, I will of course have a repository of all of them. We do that mapping on a very regular basis. And from there, if you see, I think we are doing really well. And likewise, we just keeping a close watch what's happening on the geopolitical shifts that are happening, but we are very well poised position to grab all the opportunity that comes from China shifting their clinical trial sites or their manufacturing. We already have the success story with the GCC, R&D and manufacturing. And so I think in the news, it changes a lot, but on ground, I'm not seeing much of the change. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, I think both in terms of, I think even in the policy it talks about, I think 15 or 16 departments. Bio touches all of them in some way or the other. So each of them having their own, well-defined, publicly available policies sort of helps clarity. It removes ambiguity. And then to have all these multiple sort of international fora. Yes, with the new Trump administration, definitely it's wait and watch. Every day there seems to be something new happening. and how it will go forward, but probably all the pieces are there for us to take advantage of the opportunities. Okay, so I would just like to come back to Usha for a minute. So Usha, could you speak about what we've been doing in international collaborations in academia and how to engage in such collaborations further, going forward in frontier areas? Any particular areas you think, would be most useful in terms of growing the bioeconomy?
Thank you, Gayatri. Thank you. All my panelists are touching on very, very important points. So what do institutions, which are higher education institutions like IISc, what do we normally do when we're talking about academic collaborations? So that is like our bread and butter, or your idli vada sambar or whatever. So most of us who are faculty, they engage with similar thinking or, perhaps slightly orthogonal thinking, individual faculty level collaborations, and this leads to innovation by student exchanges, faculty meeting at conferences and technical workshops and so on. All of that is very, very essential. We must continue as one of the globe's leading nations where knowledge needs to be built. So knowledge of today is going to be suddenly rediscovered as a tool for technology in the future. So we must continue to do that. There's no underplaying of that. But at the same time, we must sort of go the extra mile to go beyond bilateral relationships between two countries where we have many fora to promote all these, whether it's India, France, or India, UK, or India, US, or India, Japan. We have those initiatives already in place. We need to go beyond to multilateral initiatives and engage over there, coming back to the topic of this session, that is advancing the bioeconomy. Now, is there any synergy? So that's the question. And it's wonderful to see that just like we as Indians are thinking of bioeconomy and being able to bring bioeconomy to bear on healthcare, to bear on agriculture, to bear on pharmaceuticals, and to bear on environment and carbon security, other countries are also thinking of the same, right? So in the US, for example, there's a Center for Biorenewable Chemicals. CSIRO Australia has Biofoundry and Australian Biofoundry. Japan has a program for developing microbial design platforms. So we are at the very same level of thinking on how bioeconomies can further the economies within individual countries. So we need to leverage these multilateral science and technology groups, whether it is the Quad, Bhuvnesh mentioned that. And we already have a very, very well-developed Quad program where we have Quad PhD studentships, where the student can mobilize between any one of 4 countries. And that's been expanded right now to have a couple of more countries to join into the Quad. So this is fantastic, not only for resource and capital development and leveraging expertise in different places, but also to synergize with the thinking that's going on in the global bioeconomy. So the other way by which we can engage globally is in sharing and of data sets. So huge amount of genomic, microbial data sets which are being developed within different countries. So the soil microbiome in the Indian, so many agroecosystems is going to be unique to India. We don't know how much of this is also overlapping with something that will be happening in sub-equatorial Africa or in Latin America and so on. We have no idea. So resources, sharing resources which are very, very large data sets, whether it's the microbiome or whether it is the soil mineral characteristics or whether it is the animal, plant, or human genome data sets. Understanding these requires a global consortium to come together and to also develop very, very powerful methodologies to query and infer proper things from this requires a partnership which is beyond what we already have. So these are the things in which we should engage, because all of us are in the beginning game and we're not very far behind from any other country. And engaging now will make sure that any leads that we have are in sync with what happens elsewhere. The last but not very, not to be ignored point is on having regulatory processes which are compliant or aligned with multilateral engagement. So developing regulatory processes for release of a GMO or a release of any technology, it should be compatible with what other countries are willing to accept. Otherwise, what we discover will be only applicable to India and will not leave the market that you will get. And potentially, we come back to technology diplomacy. You can use this technology to actually diplomatically engage with other countries. So therefore, resources and technology alignment means that regulatory processes should also be aligned. Thank you.
Thank you, Usha. So actually, the regulatory, I had a question about that, because so you're talking about sort of regulatory at the sort of framework level, but even if we talk about the nitty-gritty of regulating object A or object B, finally it's the regulator who has to, take a decision. And I was reading that the FDA has some 18,000 employees. It's a phenomenal number, and they've had thousands of employees over the years, so they have developed expertise in, and not only their own in-house expertise, they have, all the professors of the United States or elsewhere whom they can call in on any emerging technology, any new thing. So our regulator is reported to be, understaffed or inexperienced, or maybe they don't even have the confidence because maybe we haven't been developing all those ultra new kind of products. So if the regulator doesn't have that expertise or confidence, how will we ever approve something novel? We'll just keep approving generics or the equivalent. So this is a question for the whole panel. How are other countries which are new to absolute new innovation handling that regulatory angle? Because all of them would have had the same issue, that they would have been used to more routine kind of innovation, and now there's, let's say, you jump start and get something really new. How do the regulators of that country handle those issues? Does anyone know? Have you heard about stories from other countries? Like, I guess China would be an example, maybe South Korea,
I could make some comment on this. And again, I'm going to narrow my context again to biotech. Clearly, and the statistic around the FDA having 18,000 people stands out. I think in CDSCMO there are 1,000, so it's an 18-fold difference in capacity. Then you touched on capability in terms of training in order to deal with the escalating and advancing complexity of regulatory requirements. It's very different to do the regulatory homework on a generic than it is to do on a CRISPR-Cas9 gene-edited product. And there's also policy around regulatory. So what is the regulator's role in assuring safety for the patients, but also enabling enterprise? Only last week in Korea, they were moving to remove some of the regulatory requirements for input materials where the product was never going to be used in Korea. And in contract manufacturing, it circles out and goes out to another country, and it's their regulator that will determine the safety. We struggle a little bit here with months and months of work that needs to be done to satisfy regulators that we've ticked the right boxes and connected all the dots for a product that will never be used in India. And it just slows us down. So there are areas there. So I think it's a combination of capacity, capability, and policy. Now in capability, India's got a chance here to apply its fantastic leadership in digital, in IT and in digital. Look what it's done at scale in some of the population-based applications in India. And AI to leapfrog in regulatory and create a IT-enabled, AI-enabled regulatory framework coupled with, I think, both capacity and capability in the people that run that. But again, this is the time. The opportunity's there. India is not at the forefront in this regard, but that's very reasonable from where it came from. But it has a wonderful opportunity to leapfrog and accelerate now.
So again, my experience as an academic is going to show. So this is definitely a lacune that we are not training people enough, science graduates and STEM graduates who are getting into policy, getting into legal, getting into patenting. We need them. So every STEM graduate need not follow the same path as every other. So it's not at all uncommon that you will be a Harvard graduate and then go into a patent attorney's office and clerk there and then take up patent internship. And I know a friend of mine did it. So we graduated at the same time from 2 top institutions in the US. Now, what is she? She's a patent attorney. Why is that important? That is important because when you run into this first in class or first of the discovery type, and you have to advise your leadership team on why the regulatory process over here should be followed to this extent and why a new regulation or why this doesn't apply. If you don't have your roots in science and technology, it will be very, very difficult, and there will be decisions made arbitrarily which may be totally not applicable. The example that Peter said. And it really will apply to innovative things, which we can't predict where innovation is going to happen. So we do need STEM graduates to be integral components in policy, integral components of developing regulatory processes, and the voice to say yes or no. So we need to partner with all these institutions, whether it is the legal schools or whether it is the business schools, to make them also understand, that this is important. That talking should be there for young people.
Sorry, can I just make one additional comment? Trying to link advancing innovation with intellectual property and not being able to predict where innovation will come from. The last statistics on patent grants on the global basis were that there were 3.6 million patents granted. I think the year is 2023. 1.5 million of those came from China, by far the largest contributor to modern intellectual property assignment. 500,000 came from America. 68,000 came from India, 25 times less than China. So I would know where I would bet my money on where innovation is going to come from at the moment. And that's another biomarker that India needs to change. And it goes back to academia, it goes back to the education on entrepreneurship and innovation and driving that through to push India up that ladder to produce more intellectual property, which is the foundation of innovative product. And if you want to advance bio in anything, you've got to drive innovative products. The world I live in is divided into 2 very, very uneven halves. And this is how you value innovation in the world of biopharma. And if you came from another universe and parked on the moon and said, tell me how healthcare is done on that planet, a reasonable description would be that 20% of the volume of interventional medicines consumed on the planet are made by a group of companies called multinationals who get temporary monopolies on the intellectual property that they discover. And the other 80% of the volume of medicine is provided by a group of companies called the generic companies. The value equation is entirely the reverse. The 20% get 80% of the value of the global biopharma market, and the 80% volume gets 20%. The multinationals move the standard of care up, incrementally usually, and fundamentally sometimes, with phenomenal breakthroughs, and that's been contributing to both the life expectancy and the quality of life. and they make a wonderful contribution, and I worked for one of those companies for 20 years. And they change the standard of care, but it's the generic companies that maintain the standard of health on the planet. But the value equation, if you want to get value, you've got to move into innovation. And that's where the company I work for is kind of moving in that direction. Others are, and that's a great opportunity for India, I think, to move up that curve from generics to innovative. China's done it in 20 years. China was nothing 20 years ago. It's gone from me too to me better to me first in 20 years. And 1/3 of licensed products on the multinational side now are coming out of China. And that's where India needs to be soon.
Just building on to that, I think what Peter...
Very quickly. We have been given time. Okay. Yeah, so we've been told we need to wrap up, so I will stop the comments, right? I think bio in itself is very complex. Bioeconomy is mind-bogglingly complex. Perhaps the points made on this panel have left more questions in our minds than have provided answers, and that's as it should be if it's a complex endeavor. But I so thank everyone for their participation in this panel. I have learned many things. I'm sure all of you have also. So let's give the participants a big hand. So I would like to invite Dr. Chagun Basha onto the stage.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Professor Gayatri, for moderating this panel and all the panelists. The reason we have to stick to timeline is many of the officials and colleagues who joined from different cities have to catch their flights. So keeping that in mind, now I request Professor Naukant Bhatt to join us. And before that, we will have a group photo of this panel. The photographer to take the group photo of this panel, and then